In this video, we're going to take a look at the 2024 electoral map based on the latest polling averages from all 50 states. We have a ton of new polls to go over, including the first ever polls from the 2nd District of Nebraska, as well as many new polls from the swing states where Trump continues to grow his lead. We'll start from the West Coast and slowly move our way eastward, and so beginning with Washington, Joe Biden might be ahead, but it's really not by the margin he'd hoped to be up by. Biden leads on average by just a little bit over 9 points in a state that he won by 19 points 4 years ago. So Washington will be in the Biden column, but it will no longer be solid. Oregon, however, Biden is performing slightly better in. He leads by just over 12 points in the state of Oregon. So this will be a solid state. California will be solid as well, where the incumbent president holds a 21-point lead, although this is still relatively weak if you compare it to his 29-point victory in 2020. Joe Biden will continue to dominate the Pacific Coast, but not as much as he did in the last election. Moving on to Nevada and Arizona, our first two competitive battleground states. Beginning in the Silver State, we're going to use the 5-way polling average, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is likely to make the ballot in the state of Nevada. And in this scenario, Donald Trump leads by 7.2% over Joe Biden. Biden's only polling in at 34.8% in a state that he won in 2020. Nevada is probably the most likely flip in terms of all the states he did not win in either 2020 or 2016. And so Nevada will be in the likely Republican column. Arizona will be red as well. Trump leads by 4 points in the state and has held a relatively consistent lead over the past 8 months. And so the state of Arizona will fall into the lean Republican column, but Trump is performing very well in a state that he lost in the last election. This was the second closest state in the entire race, only behind Georgia. In Colorado and New Mexico, these two states used to be pretty competitive in the elections of 2000 and 2004. However, they became blue in 2008 with the election of Obama, and they haven't looked back since, voting for Democrats in every single election. In 2020, Joe Biden won Colorado by a solid 14-point margin, and New Mexico by 11. Today, however, Biden's margin in Colorado has decreased by more than half. He is now only ahead by 6.5 percentage points over the former president, which will make Colorado just barely a likely Democratic state. New Mexico, Biden is faring slightly better in. The latest polling here shows him ahead by 8 points on average, although the most recent poll we have is from August of last year. New polling data is likely to show that Biden is performing worse now than he was a year ago. But for now, this is all the data we have, and New Mexico is also going to be likely blue. Before we continue, only 7% of you guys are subscribed, so take the time to subscribe right now for non-stop election coverage leading up to November. Moving on to the rural states in the middle of the country, this is Trump's best performing region. He leads by solid margins in every single one of them. We have polls from over a year ago, nothing too new, so nothing really to go over. Trump performs better in this region up here than he does even in the deep south, and we do actually have data from the 2nd District of Nebraska. Basically, the entire rest of the state is solid for Donald Trump, with the exception of the competitive 2nd District. We have 2 polls from here, and RFK Jr. is likely to make the ballot in Nebraska, so we do have to consider his impact. And in one poll, Biden leads by 5, Trump is up by 3 in the other one, so Biden has a very slight 1-point edge in a region that he won by nearly 7 points in 2020. So the 2nd District of Nebraska is going to be tilt blue. And to finish off the western half of the continental U.S. in the Lone Star State, Texas, with 40 electoral votes, is going to be a major prize for Trump. It's a must-win state, so good thing for him. He leads by 9.3% over Joe Biden, very similar to his 2016 margin in the state. In 2020, that margin went down to 5.6, but he's likely to bring it up this November. So Texas is going to be a very reliable, likely Republican state. while in Alaska and Hawaii, we don't have many polls. However, Trump leads by a solid 12-point margin in Alaska, while in Hawaii, let me preface this by saying that this is a state that the incumbent president won by 30 points in 2020. Hillary Clinton even won the state by 32. Obama, this was his home state. He won it by 42 points in 2012. And in 2008, Hawaii voted for Democrats by a 45-point margin. That's how blue Hawaii was. It's basically the most liberal state in some elections. However, in 2024, Joe Biden leads by just 8% in the Aloha State. So Hawaii is going to be likely Democratic. This is probably a result of Biden's handling of the Maui fires, where he basically left residents out to dry. He's become pretty unpopular in the state as a result of it. He's still probably going to win Hawaii, but it's really not going to be by an impressive margin by any means. And now we're going to move on to the Deep South before we get into the Northeast and the Midwest, which is probably going to be the most consequential region for a third election in a row. But Donald Trump, just like many of these rural states here, he's going to win the states of Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina with no problem. These are all solid red states that he's going to carry by margins of 12 percentage points or more. Virginia, on the other hand, though, is going to be a lot more competitive. Biden might have won the state by a double-digit margin in the last election, but he now only leads by 3 points, and the most recent poll, the only poll conducted in 2024 so far, conducted by Roanoke College, shows a tie between the two presumptive nominees. So Joe Biden is not only performing poorly in the state, he might even lose it, as Virginia is a state that Trump is targeting, like other states such as Minnesota as well as New Mexico. These are states that Trump is trying to make new battlegrounds, and if polls continue to show data like this, it might really just happen. So Virginia is going to be a lean Democratic state. North Carolina, though, despite being supposedly more competitive, at least in the last election, Trump only won it by just over 1 point. He now leads by 7 points in the five-way polling average, as this is a state where RFK Jr. is likely to make the ballot. So the Tar Heel state is going to be likely Republican. Georgia, though, is going to be just one step down, as Trump leads by 4.8%. He's led throughout the entirety of the election cycle. Biden's victory in the Peach State was a surprise 4 years ago. He won it by just over 0.2%. This was the closest state of the election. If you look at what's changed in terms of Biden's popularity, which has gone down considerably since the 2020 election, there's basically no way that Georgia continues to go blue, considering Biden's sharp decline in approval. So the state of Georgia is going to just barely miss out on being likely, but it will still be placed in the lean Republican column. And to finish off the Sun Belt with Florida, 30 electoral votes, another major prize for the former president. Florida used to be one of the most competitive states in the country. It went to Trump by 3 points. This was considered a pretty large margin, as in 2016, even Hillary Clinton got Trump to around 1 point, and in 2012, Barack Obama, who was reelected with 332 electoral votes, carried Florida by less than 1 point. It was the closest state of the election, and I mean, if you go back to 2000, it was even closer. So the Sunshine State has, for a very long time, been ultra competitive, but that is not the case anymore. Republicans have taken a very substantial lead in the state. Trump is ahead by 9 points. It's not even listed as one of the battleground states anymore. And if you look at the Senate election there, Rick Scott is up by 10 points. So the state of Florida is going to be likely Republican, and it's probably not going to be competitive for a very long time. Moving up to the Northeast, we're going to get all of these solid Biden states out of the way. We have Maryland, the District of Columbia, his home state of Delaware, as well as Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, and the 1st District of Maine. And now to go over the more competitive states in the region, it's really surprising that we see New York and New Jersey up there, but in New York, the polling average only has Biden ahead by 8 points, in a state that he won by 23. This just goes to show you the impact of Andrew Cuomo's resignation as a result of a sexual harassment scandal, and on top of that, Governor Kathy Hochul, who replaced him, is very unpopular. In fact, Trump is performing much better than you would think in New York City. So the state of New York is no longer solid blue, at least in this election. and this map will reflect it by placing it in the likely Democratic column. New Jersey will be likely blue as well. We only have one poll from the state so far, and it only shows Biden ahead by 7. This is a result of Bob Menendez's various convictions for bribery. Up in New Hampshire, Biden leads by 5.3%. His margin has dropped slightly with a new poll from the University of New Hampshire showing the incumbent president ahead by just 4 points in a state that he won by 7 in the last election. So New Hampshire is going to be likely Democratic, while in the state of Maine, the 2nd district is going to be solid. Trump is going to perform much better than his 7-point margin in the last election. He now leads by well over 12 points. And even in the state as a whole, Trump is ahead in the polling average. He leads by around 3 points. So the state of Maine, which voted for Joe Biden by 9 points, is currently expected to go to Donald Trump, according to the latest polls. And now to finish off with the Midwest, this is going to be the region that decides the election, because even at this point, no candidate has reached 270 electoral votes. We're going to get the most solid states out of the way first. Indiana is going to be solid red, while Illinois will be solid blue. All the polls confirm that, while in Iowa, the latest polling shows Trump ahead by 11.5, just barely missing out on being solid, while in Ohio we see the same thing where Trump leads by 10 points. So with this filled in, we basically have the upper Midwest to worry about. These are the 4 states that will really go down to the wire. In Minnesota, Biden did relatively well in the state in 2020, carrying it by 7 points. However, just 4 years prior, Hillary Clinton came within 2 points of losing it, which does show that Minnesota is flippable, and that's what Trump is aiming to do this November. According to the latest polling data, Biden leads by just over 2 points. This is a relatively weak margin considering how he performed last time, and considering the fact that this state hasn't voted Republican since 1972. So Minnesota is going to go into the lean Democratic column. Wisconsin will be close as well. This is a state where Trump leads by just 0.1 percentage points. We have a lot of polls that show various different things, one with Biden ahead, couple of ties, as well as the majority of polls which do show Trump in the lead. Trump is performing much better than in 2020, where if you look at the polling average from 4 years ago, Biden was supposed to win this state by 7 points. He eventually won it by just 0.7. So Wisconsin is a state that's known to overestimate Biden's support, and so just the fact that Trump is even ahead shows you how well he's really performing. So Wisconsin is going to be tilt Republican. Next door in Michigan, the Wolverine State is the most liberal out of the 3, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. These are often referred to as the Blue Wall because they were reliable Democratic states going from the Clinton era all the way down to the end of the Obama era. It was Hillary Clinton that lost all 3 of these states in 2016. And in Michigan, we have a complete tie in the 5-way polling average, as RFK Jr. is likely to make it onto the ballot. He's actually secured ballot access already here. And so if you look at the average, Trump was leading before this race went to a tie, so we're going to give him the slight advantage, also considering the fact that he does lead in the 2-way average, so Michigan is also going to be tilt Republican. And finally, in Pennsylvania, this is Joe Biden's birth state, and a state that he almost has to win if he wants to stay alive. However, unfortunately for him, Trump leads by 2.3 points in the Keystone State. He's performing better in Pennsylvania than any of these other competitive Midwestern states, and so that will make the state likely, or lean actually, for the Republicans. And so with all the states filled in, Donald Trump is on track to winning 314 electoral votes this November and will be reelected to a second non-consecutive term. He's doing very well in the Sunbelt states, while the Midwest remains highly competitive. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and comment down below who you think will win the election. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I will see you guys in the next video.